Baruchot habaot, ladies, and welcome to another edition of our weekly Torah classes. And whether or not you're logging on to Torah Anytime or to ohelserah.com, you know how I feel about your dedication and commitment to your Torah learning, to your neshama, to yourself, Ladies, today is Yom Rishon. We are just days away from Chag HaPesach. And you almost can't believe it. And I'm still here, Baruch Hashem, in Eretz Yisrael in Bet Shemesh, in our Ohel Sarah facility, our home, where very soon we're going to be starting here some bi-monthly shiurim. We're so happy that we're finally able to begin because we had a seger. Everything was shut down and closed, and people were afraid to gather. Now, Baruch Hashem, we're starting. Last week we actually had our second shiur from the first time that I came, and we had it in somebody's house on a Friday night in Bet Shemesh in Ama Aleph. It was a beautiful, beautiful shiur with a beautiful turnout. The ladies were so special, and we all decided that yalla, it's time to get moving and to begin again. So Be'ezat Hashem, we're going to start officially right after Pesach, Be'ezat Hashem. And hopefully you'll see the crowd. It'll be a live shiur. I can't wait. I can't wait. The live interaction, there's nothing to compare that. As I said, ladies, we are just days away from Chag HaPesach, the holiday of redemption and hope. And I want to learn together with you about the fourth of the 15 simanim of the Seder night, which is called Yachatz. What is Yachatz? The Shulchan Aruch explains that when we arrive at the Yachatz portion of the Seder, we take the middle matzah of the three matzot that are on the Seder plate on the table, and we break that middle matzah in half. The source of this practice actually comes from the Torah HaKdosha, specifically in Parashat Re'eh, where it states the following: Shivat yamim tochal alav matzot. For 7 days shall you eat matzot. Lechem oni, for it is the bread of affliction. And Chachamim tell us that although we read these last two words as lechem oni, it's actually written as lechem ani, suggesting that it should be eaten like a poor man eats his bread. How does a poor man eat his bread? A poor man generally eats broken pieces of bread because he doesn't necessarily have enough. And so too over here. We fulfill the mitzvah of Yachatz with a broken piece. And when do we break the Matzah? We do so at the beginning of the Seder. So let's begin to understand this custom, this minhag of Yachatz, of the breaking of the middle Matzah. The Tur, Alav Shalom, writes that we take the middle Matzah and we break it in two. One half is set aside for the afikoman, which will be used and eaten much later on at the end of the Seder. And the other half is put back on the plate between the other two whole matzot. Then we raise the Seder plate containing the 2.5 matzot and we recite the words, Ha-lachma anya, this is the bread of poverty, diachalu avhatana, that our ancestors ate, be'aradi mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt. And then we say the words, Kol dichvin yeitev veyechol. Let all who are hungry come and partake of our meal. According to the Tur, we break the matzah at the beginning of the Seder before reciting these words of Ha lachma anya. This is the bread of affliction, of poverty, and that's been the practice throughout the Jewish world. So the first 4 simanim of the Seder are Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz. At Yachatz, we break the middle matzah, and only after we break the matzah do we proceed with the reading of the Haggadah, which we know is the Magid portion of the Seder. Here's the question. Why do we have the minhag of breaking the middle matzah at the onset of the Haggadah? And then after that do we recite the words, Kol dichfin yeteh v'yachol, let all who are hungry come and partake of our meal. Why? And why did Hashem command us to eat the bread of a poor man on the night of the Seder, which is the most auspicious night of the year? We can't possibly assume that it relates to those who were poor among Bnei Yisrael during the Exodus from Egypt, because all of Bnei Yisrael left Egypt with great wealth. They were all rich. If you remember, HaKadosh Baruch Hu kept his promise to Avraham Avinu alav shalom when he told him that his descendants would be slaves in Egypt, actually not in Egypt. He told him his descendants would be slaves in bondage, but they would come out of that bondage with great wealth. V'achrechen yetzu birchush gadol. If that's the case, why are we commanded to break this middle matzah at the beginning of the Seder, which represents poor man's bread? Not only that, but when we break the middle matzah into 2 pieces, which is the Yachatz portion of the Seder, we leave one piece on the Seder plate to fulfill the mitzvah of eating the matzah, but we hide the larger piece for the afikoman. Why do we combine these 2 requirements? Why can't we just take a piece of some other matzah for the afikoman, at the end of the meal just take a piece of matzah, whatever is left, and eat it at the end for the afikoman like we're supposed to eat it? Why dafka do we have to use that piece that's hidden away? Hopefully, ladies, all these questions are going to be answered as we proceed. The Magen Avraham alav shalom writes that the reason we set aside the larger piece of the matzah for the afikoman is to show how precious the mitzvah is to us. That was also the minhag, by the way, of the Ari HaKadosh alav shalom, who actually explains the mystical reasons for this minhag. But tonight, I want to share an amazing chidush with you that I hope will take you into this Chag feeling very, very inspired. There's a fascinating explanation from the Kolbo alav shalom concerning the words Ha lachma anya. This is the bread of poverty. And I'm going to translate his words into English for you, because he says the following. Ha lachma anya is an announcement to the young children, explaining why we divide the matzah in 2. Why we do it the way a poor man would. We explain to the children that we do this because our forefathers in Egypt ate poor man's bread due to the necessary rush, having to leave Egypt as quickly as possible. Therefore they said to one another, whoever is in need, whoever wishes to eat, should come and partake of our meal. Whoever did not prepare should come to us, for we have it. We have bread that's ready. Let all who are in need come and celebrate the Pesach with us, and should not hesitate to do so. Dear brothers, at present we are here in Egypt, but next year we will be in Eretz Israel. Let us rejoice that we are eating now in haste, for next year we will be in the Holy Land, And when we are there, we will eat comfortably as we wish. And if in the present we are slaves, next year we will all be free men. And then the Holy Kolba ends with these words. Kol ze she'amru avotenu. All these words that our forefathers in Egypt said, which I just recited to you, ve'anu osin kedugmatan, are meant for us to model their behavior. What does this mean? First of all, Rashi HaKadosh Alav Shalom explains the meaning of the term lechem oni, the bread of affliction, of poverty. He says that it's called the bread of affliction because we left the land of Egypt in a rush, which means that it's the bread that reminds us of the affliction that we suffered in Egypt, that we left in such a hurry to get out of there, that many of us didn't even have enough time to let our dough rise correctly. Therefore, according to the Kolba, immediately after we perform the step of Yachatz, where we break the middle matzah, we explain to the young children as follows. Ha lachma anya. This is the poor man's bread. Diachalu avhatana, that our forefathers ate. Be'ara di Mitzrayim, in the land of Egypt. We teach our children that we're breaking the matzah in two because we want to fulfill the mitzvah with just a mere piece of the matzah, which symbolizes the behavior of a poor man who doesn't eat a full piece of bread. And that commemorates the fact that our forefathers ate poor man's bread while they were leaving Egypt because of the need for haste. They didn't have enough time to prepare and bake normal bread. But then we explained to the children that due to the fact that we were in such a rush to leave Egypt, many people among our brothers in Am Yisrael were not able to prepare matzot or other Pesach foods for themselves. However, those who did have a chance to prepare, generously and selflessly and without thinking twice, turned to their fellow brothers while they were leaving Egypt, and they said, Kol dichfin, whoever's hungry, yeiteh veyechol, let him come and eat. Let them join us. These selfless Jews realized that there were those among them who didn't have enough time to prepare. So they told them, Kol ditzrich, whoever's in need, yeiteh veyifsach, let him come and celebrate the Pesach with us. They offered to share their supplies with anyone who needed them. And then they encouraged one another, saying, Hashta acha. Now we're here. Now, unfortunately, we're eating the matzot and the korban Pesach in a rush due to the circumstances of this galut. But don't worry. L'shana haba be'ar'ad Yisrael. Next year, we're all going to be in the Holy Land. We're going to eat leisurely like free men. And then everybody's going to have ample time to prepare for the Chag. Hashta avdei. Now, we're slaves, fleeing for our lives from Egypt. But, L'shana haba'a b'nei chorin. Next year, we're all going to be free men and we're all going to celebrate leisurely with happiness and without any stress. What a beautiful chidush this is from the Holy Kolbo. He's telling us that even during the Exodus, those who left Egypt performed the Yachatz. In what way? They broke off pieces of their whole matzot in order to share it with those who didn't have any. Those Baalei Chesed announced, whoever's hungry, let him come and eat with us. Whoever is in need, let him come and celebrate Pesach with us. Perhaps that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded us to eat matzah on the night of Pesach like a poor man eats matzah. Maybe that's why we refer to it as lechem ani, because we're in essence reenacting the tremendous chesed that was performed by our ancestors who left Egypt at the time of the Exodus, where they broke off pieces from their whole matzot in order to share it with their friends in need. They had this selfless behavior where they extended themselves beyond their means, beyond their abilities, beyond themselves, and they felt the pain of their fellow brothers. They considered them. Well, who did they learn this middah from? This selfless middah, this generous middah, this empathetic middah. Who did they learn this from? Who inspired them? Well, first of all, notice how we break the middle matzah and not the first or the third matzah. We break the second matzah, which is the middle matzah. Why the middle matzah? Now, there are numerous reasons given, but I want to focus only on one, which the Ari HaKadosh Alav Shalom provides us with. The Arizal, in a sefer on Pesach titled Pri Etz Chaim, compares the top matzah to the Cohen, the middle matzah to Shevet Levi, to the tribe of Levi, and the third matzah on the bottom to Israel. And he writes the following, I'm going to quote you his words. Mitzvat matzah shmura, the mitzvah of the shmura matzah should be placed on the plate as follows. V'taniach hakohen lema'ala, first, the first matzah, which represents the Kohen, has to be on top. V'halevi lemata mimeno, and the second matzah, which represents the tribe of Levi, should be placed underneath the Kohen. Ve'ha'Yisrael, and the third matzah, which represents Israel, lemata mimeno, is placed underneath that one that represents Levi. And then the Arizal quotes the Shulchan Aruch that states, Vayikach matzah ha'emtza'it, and then we take the middle matzah, the matzah which represents Shevet Levi, Vayivatzena l'shtayim, and we break it in two. Why do we break this middle matzah that represents Shevet Levi? What's so important about Shevet Levi? Rav Aaron Wolkin, Alav Shalom, tells us a very important detail about the members of Shevet Levi. Shevet Levi was the only tribe that Paro did not force into the physical bondage of Egypt. They were exempt from the terrible avodah kasha, from the terrible hard labor of the slavery. So we break the middle matzah to show that even though Shevet Levi was not slaving away like the rest of their brothers, they were still afflicted because they felt the pain of their brothers. They had a middah of empathy that caused them to feel broken, just like the rest of Bnei Israel felt broken. They understood the great suffering, not only of the physical labor in Egypt that their brothers were enduring, but the emotional consequences of the horrors that they were experiencing over there. And they empathized with their fellow Jews, although they were not in the same position as they were in. They extended themselves and they tried to help their brothers remove some of the emotional burdens that they were going through. So we break the middle matzah, which represents Shevet Levi, and how broken they felt for their fellow brothers, how they tried to help heal the brokenness of their fellow brothers. You know, there are so many people that I've spoken to recently, received emails from, or I'm in contact with somehow in some way, who are not only struggling on a daily basis amid their own galut of life and its nisyonot. Not just that, but somehow when the Chag rolls around on the calendar, it becomes even more challenging. So you and I, we have to be like Shevet Levi, understanding and knowing that there are people out there who feel broken. There are many among us who are in a state of emotional ani, an emotional affliction. Being an ani doesn't just mean you lack funds, that you're in a state of financial poverty. So many of us are ani'im because we're afflicted by nisyonot that deplete our emotional and sometimes spiritual strengths. Many people feel alone and dejected, and they don't know how they're going to be able to proceed forward, and certainly they don't know how they're going to go forward into the Chag. They don't know how they're going to have an exodus, a redemption from their own state of emotional poverty. We break the middle Matzah, which represents Shevet Levi, the ones who understood their fellow brothers and how broken they can feel. We break the middle Matzah to represent Levi, who himself felt broken for his brothers, because this Shevet, even though they didn't have the same kind of situation that their brothers had, but they were so full of empathy, so full of empathy. And then we extend the other half of the Matzah, very much like our forefathers did in Egypt, saying, whoever's hungry and didn't have time to prepare because he was physically or emotionally stunted, I have food for you. Here it is, I have it. I have emotional supplies that I can share with you. I understand you. I feel broken together with you. And therefore, I want to share a piece of myself with you, which I hope will give you the strength to lift yourself up and out of the despair that you're feeling. I'd like to share a part of myself, even though my own strengths might deplete, by extending myself to you, by extending my half to you. But at least my half will provide you with some hope and some faith. So a way out of the galut that you find yourself in. This, ladies, is the greatest chesed a person can do for somebody. And this is where our forefathers in Egypt learned this Middah of empathy from. It was from Shevet Levi, one of the most empathetic of tribes. Let me tell you how inspired the rest of Am Yisrael was from all the years of learning from Shevet Levi. Because the Tanna de Eliyahu Rabbi Alav Shalom says on this entire idea that those Jews who left Egypt acquired only one mitzvah. And that one mitzvah was more pleasing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu than 100 mitzvot. What was that one mitzvah? Says the Tanna de Eliyahu Rabbah, listen to his words. She'asu kulam aguda achat. That they all formed a single unit. They became one. V'kartu brit. And they made a covenant. What kind of covenant? Ligmol chesed ze im ze. To perform a chesed, one with the other. What chesed? The fact that they broke off pieces of their own whole matzot and they announced, Kol dichfin yeteh v'yechol. Whoever's hungry, please come eat at our table. Kol ditzrich yeteh v'yifsach. Whoever needs, please come join us for Pesach. This was a tremendous chesed that they did with one another. So great a chesed it was that years later, Yirmiyah Navi Alav Shalom praises Bnei Yisrael for it. And what does he say? Ko Amar Hashem, thus said God, Zacharti lach chesed ne'uraich. I recall for you the kindness of your youth. Ahavat kelulotaich, the love of your nuptials. Lechtech acharai bamidbar, how you followed me into the wilderness, be'eretz lo zru'ah, in a land that wasn't sown. Now we know that Bnei Yisrael followed HaKadosh Baruch Hu into the desert without real provisions, which demonstrated their tremendous faith in Him. But why does Yirmiyahu Navi describe it as chesed ne'uraych, the chesed of your youth? What chesed did the Jews perform by going into the midbar? It would have been more correct to say, Zacharti lach emunat ne'uraych. I recalled the faith of your youth, how you marched into the desert with such faith, not knowing where you're heading, not knowing where your next meal is going to come from or how you're going to survive. I remember that emunah of your youth. No, instead Hashem says, Zacharti lach chesed ne'uraych. I recalled the kindnesses of your youth. Why does the Navi word it that way? Ladies, based on what we learned from the Kolbo, perhaps we could understand this pasuk in Yirmiyahu Navi the following way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is emphasizing the fact that not only does He remember that Bnei Yisrael forged into the wilderness without provisions, but He also remembers the chesed of their youth, the praiseworthy chesed they performed as they left Egypt, that they shared their matzot with one another by breaking off pieces from their own matzot in order to share it with those who didn't have. That's why we have this widespread, age-old minhag, where before Pesach, we distribute supplies, we distribute food, we distribute funds to those who are less fortunate than us. We call that mitzvah, that minhag, kimcha de pischa, literally flour for Pesach. You know why we do this? Because this minhag helps us to commemorate the chesed that we performed during Yetziat Mitzrayim, where everybody broke off pieces of their own whole matzot in order to share it with their brothers who didn't have any. Therefore, it's become an accepted Jewish minhag to give donations so that we could distribute it to the poor. Now, ladies, as you know, I am an avid campaigner and supporter of helping people, And in the last 2 years, I've been beating down on your doors for help, for everything. And I know that up in Shamayim, you are accumulating so much a spiritual wealth that I hope is going to be leschutchem for anything that you need in your life. And I know about the Purim campaign and the Israel campaign, and listen, it's before Mashiach, so I gotta help you and me do as much as possible. I know that I can't ask for too much more. I keep asking and asking. But it's again all for distribution, for a good cause. So I'm only going to tell you this: you do whatever you want. I have a list here that I made of 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 11. Of 11 people that really, I really have a whole list, but these are the most, I guess, for me, unfortunate, that I know could really, really use our help. We have, and I'm going to tell you of each of them, their particular cases, but not in detail, okay? And not long, because I want to move on with the shiur. I have a 7-year-old kid here on the list who, for 7 years of her life, because the parents are not well-to-do at all, has been getting hand-me-downs since she's a baby. Never has this young girl worn anything that actually belongs to her. You know how sad that is? I have tears in my eyes as I say it. I happen to be around her a lot, and I told her, you know what, the next time I go to America, because I know she likes America and she's always talking to me about the fact that I'm from America, I'm going to get you something special. And I told her I'm going to buy her a coat. That's my chesed that I want to do. But I was with her a week ago, I think it was, or 2 weeks ago, and she said to me, you know what I would love if I could have something to wear for the Chag that's just mine. Something that I can go shopping with my mommy and I could pick it out for myself. And I know what she was trying to tell me. I don't want just that my mother should grab from whoever is giving to her and I should be wearing the next door neighbor's sweater. It's not the most pleasant feeling in the world. And certainly it's even more unpleasant, you know, for a kid who's walking down the street and all of a sudden other kids could be very mean. And pitom a kid yells out, hey, that's my sweater you're wearing. How mevayesh is that? How embarrassing is that? So I would like to collect a little bit of money for this little 7-year-old girl. I'm going there actually tomorrow to this city, and I would like to give her mother an envelope so she could take her kid to go shopping for the Chag, just for this kid. Okay, that's one. Then I have her mother, meaning the family. It's a family of 5 kids and the parents. They should be able to put something on the table, food, without having to feel restrained about their shopping. That's that family. There's another family that has actually 7 kids that really, actually this third family, which is really the second family, the husband reached out to me that he's in dire need of funds, so I'd like to help them. Then there's a friend of mine who has 5 kids who I would really like to help because they also are in dire need. Then there's my Rabanit, who I always try to help her during the Chag because she does so much for the community, but the community is not the most wealthy community, so they don't necessarily give back in that way, so I'd like to help her. And there's an almanah, and actually she's also yatomah. She doesn't have parents anymore, and she's an almanah who really has 0 funds for the Chag. So those are the people that I would like to collect for, plain and pashut. If you'd like to make a donation for any of these, you could just designate it when you log on to ohelsara.com, www.ohelsara.com, and click on the donate button, and you could tell me you either want to donate it to the 7-year-old girl, to one of the 3 families, either to the Rabanit or to the Almanah. So this way I know where to allocate the funds. That's all I'm going to say about this list that I'm collecting for these families and a few kids. Okay. Having said that, we break the middle matzah. We wrap the larger piece and we put it aside to eat later as the afikoman. The smaller piece returns to its place on the seder plate, where it continues to fulfill its function despite the loss. You know what a lesson this is, ladies? Listen to these words again. The smaller piece returns to its place on the seder plate, where it continues to fulfill its function despite the loss. What a lesson this is. Chachamim tell us that quite often our inability to give and to share is the product of a skewed picture of reality. Now we're getting into psychology. Why? Because we think we're limited. There's just so much that I can give. And our sages tell us that that's just a perceived limitation. We might think something to be true, but that doesn't mean that it is, say Chachamim. Just because you see it that way doesn't mean it's true. It might be a perceived limitation. So the Chachamim command us, I'm going to show you what a perceived your perceived thought is, how perceived limitation works. Chachamim command us to break the middle matzah and set the other one aside in order to teach us not only to be giving individuals, but to know that our giving is not limited. Which means, or actually I say doesn't mean, that you completely and wholly, with a W, W-H-O-L-L-Y. It doesn't mean that you completely and wholly forsake your being, forsake your house, drop your life, quit your job, neglect your children. That's not what it means. But Chachamim say you have the ability, without being limited, to offer at least half. At least half. If your brother or sister needed some time, some of your time, some of your money, a little piece of your heart, would you not find a way to give it to them? Am Yisrael is an aguda achat. We're a family. We're all brothers and sisters. And just as there are plenty of needs, so are there plenty of resources. So the Chachamim are encouraging us, and they're saying, when you break that middle matzah, it's showing you that if you only realized how much you do have to give, it would then inspire you to truly want to give. Imagine this. One day a friend calls you that she's stranded on the highway somewhere in Hudson Platz, I don't know where. She has no money, it's getting dark, no cars seem to be driving by. What would you do? What would you do? Would you not find a way to help somehow, some way? And I'm going to tell you a story that a friend of mine who's listening to this is going to know the story because she's the one involved in this story. I don't know if I should say her name, even though it's an incredible story, but just in case she doesn't want her name mentioned, I'm not going to mention it. When I first moved back from Eretz Yisrael many years ago, when I took a sabbatical and I came here for a year, I was here a year and a half, I think it was. So I had just found an apartment and I just gotten a job, and everything was very tight with money because everything was, new. So I remember that I wanted to do a chesed for somebody. Somebody asked me if I could drive their daughter. It was the summertime, July. It was mamish, the weekend of July 4th. I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago. I don't remember exactly, but around that time. And somebody asked me if I could please drive their daughter up to camp in the country. And I was in Brooklyn, New York. From Brooklyn to the mountains is about a good 2.5 hours to 3 hours, depending on the exit off the 17, I think it's called, that highway. Bekitzu, so I called one of my friends. I said, oh, by the way, just in case you're looking for me or whatever it is, I'm going out to the mountains. I'm picking up this young girl in the afternoon. I'm driving to the mountains to take her, and then I'll be back. And while I'm doing that, I may as well do another chesed, because there was this pregnant gioret who needed out. And I said, you know what? You want to come along with me just for some fresh air, change of scenery? She goes, sure. So this friend who I called to let her know that I'm now traveling up to the country in the afternoon says, you know what? What ashgacha pratit this is? I have a son. He's in camp now with a friend. And I have to get him back for Shabbat. And we didn't know how we're going to get him back, if he was going to schlep on buses. Maybe you could do me a favor, and after you drop off the girl, you could go to pick him up in the country and bring him back. I said, Besimcha. So that was the plan. Drop off this girl, go pick up her kid with his friend, and drive them all back. With this pregnant lady, Gioret, sitting next to me. And everything went as smoothly as you could possibly imagine on the way there. And I was telling Hashem, thank you for this chesed. Look at what you're providing me with. I have the Gioret, pregnant lady who needed an out, so I'm making her happy. I'm dropping off this girl whose mother needed her to be in camp before Shabbat. And I'm bringing back two yeshiva boys, teenagers, I think they were 15 or 16 at the time, back to the city, because their parents need them before Shabbat. What a wonderful zchut you're giving me. That's how I was thinking. And everything was going as planned. I drop off this girl in camp. I go to pick up these two young yeshiva boys. They sit in the back. And now we are on the way back from the country back to Brooklyn. And it's around 5:45 at night now, in the evening, and it's still slightly sunny outside, and I'm driving, and I'm talking to the pregnant lady while the two boys in the back are talking to themselves. All of a sudden, I see a siren, and I tell the pregnant lady and the guys in the back, I'm like, there's an officer, there's a police car behind me. Am I doing anything wrong? I'm not speeding. And my lights are not out. What could possibly be wrong? They're like, I don't know. We really don't know what could be wrong. Everything's fine. I'm like, oh no. I better not be stuck with this anti-Semitic. Some of these state troopers upstate are extremely anti-Semitic. Let me not get stuck with this anti-Semitic cop. And I pull over. Well, I got an anti-Semitic cop. It was very clear that he was anti-Semitic. He looks into the car. He sees who I am. He sees with the kisui, everything. He sees a pregnant lady in the car. He sees two yeshiva guys. He understood who we were. Ma'am, can I please see your license and registration? I said, sir, officer, before I give you my license and registration, you mind telling me what I did wrong? He says, please, license and registration. He didn't want to tell me anything. I give him my license and registration. He goes to the back to the car. He's sitting there, he comes and goes, ma'am, do you know that your license is expired? Suspended. My license is suspended. Since when? What? I was in shock. He clearly saw that I was in shock. Like, my license suspended? What in heaven? He saw that I was genuinely shocked. He goes, yes, ma'am, it's been suspended since March. March, we're now July, 3 months ago. I'm like, why did they suspend my license? He goes, ma'am, I don't care why they suspended your license. You're driving with a suspended license. You're going to have to stay here and not drive, or get somebody to come and take you, leave the car here and do whatever. I said, I'm going to leave my car deserted in the middle of a road. I have to understand, this is a country road, which means we were on the 17, I think not too far from exit 13, and he's telling you, and there's no lights on the road over there, and he expects us to stay parked there. The guys can't drive, they're not licensed. This pregnant lady had no license. How are we going to get back? I said, officer, you have to let me, at least please give me a pass, let me go, let me keep driving, and when I get to Brooklyn, I'll park the car, go to the DMV, check. Absolutely not. He was fighting with me. I said, you know what? Forget that. I'm going to try to get this done the way you want me to, but I just have a quick question. Can you tell me what I did wrong? Why did you stop me? Why did I stop you? You were swerving on the road. I was swerving on the road? And all of them said, she was not swerving. We would have felt she was swerving. No. Now he goes to the next thing. He realized he can't get away with that one. So he goes, you were too close to a bus. A bus? I'm like, did any of you guys see a bus? There was no bus. Bekitzu, he came up with 4 different penalties against me, which chutz from the fact that I was driving with a suspended license, that I didn't know I was driving with a suspended license, nothing else stimmed. And now I'm arguing with him. I'm trying to get his compassion going. And I see it's very hard. He's anti-Semitic. And I'm saying, officer, as you could see, we have no water, no food here in the car. We were going to stop off somewhere and get some provisions for the way, but now we're stuck. I have a pregnant woman, as you could see here. I have 2 young boys in the back. They're 15, 16. Please, you expect us to be stuck here in the middle of the road with nothing? Can you at least let us go to the next exit so we can get off and I can drive somewhere where I can buy some bottles of water and some snacks? So he says, you know what? Follow me to the next exit. I'm thinking, oh, finally some compassion. We're going to get off the exit and he's going to probably drive me to some kind of little grocery store or supermarket. I'll buy some things and make some calls to see what I can do. Where did he drive me? To the police station. A little shack it was, a little police station shack, where he says, ma'am, park your car. I parked the car. He goes, you're going to stay here. As you can see, he goes, there's lights. So you're not going to be in the dark. There's a supermarket 6 miles down the road. If you want, you can walk to the supermarket, get yourself something to drink and come back. He thinks I'm gonna walk now in the dark 6 miles and come back with provisions on the way. So I start arguing with him back and forth. Another officer comes out, he sees, he understands, but he doesn't know what to do. And then he threatens me, he says, what do you want? You want me to, you know that legally, if you're driving with a suspended license, I could have you locked up. Now you know it's July 4th weekend. You're gonna see a judge on Monday, not tomorrow. If you want, I could put you in jail. I could lock you up, and only on Monday morning, you'll be able to see a judge. Now I'm thinking, oh my God, he's gonna lock me up, that's all I need, and I don't know what to do. The other officer had slight more compassion in him. He walked out, he just ran off, and he warns me, and he says, I'm leaving now. Took his car, and he was about to leave, and he goes, but I'm gonna keep an eye on you. If I see you on the road, I will put you in jail. What am I gonna do? I said, okay, thank you. Not knowing what to do. It's getting even darker. Now it's starting to get dark. I have this pregnant lady and 2 boys, young boys, and they're not sure what's gonna be now. They're huffing and puffing, they're scared now. The other officer brings out 2 small bottles of water. What am I gonna do with 2 small bottles of water? One I give to the pregnant lady, one I gave to the guys. And with a couple of non-kosher donuts, they looked like. I said, I'm sorry, we eat kosher, I don't know I can't take this. And I called this friend, one of my friends, the ones whose son I have in the back, and his friend. She's like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? And she goes, let me see if I can make a few phone calls. And right away she started to activate herself to see if maybe, now you have to understand, it's now around almost 7 now. It's getting very dark. It's July 4th weekend. Shabbos was supposed to be July 4th. And I'm stuck here, and for somebody to come get us, it means 2 people with licenses have to come. It's going to take them probably 3-4 hours to get here, another 3-4 hours to get back with traffic. We're doomed. Who's going to come and get us? The kids are all these phone calls back and forth, and she's trying to arrange it that her husband and her son-in-law should come drive out to us, and then her son-in-law would drive back my car with all of us in it, and her husband would drive back their car. While that's happening, I said, you know what? Let me call Chaverim. Chaverim, you know, is a beautiful chesed organization that helps you with every possible thing you can imagine. And I'm thinking, what can they do for me? But let me call them anyway. I called them up, and I almost burst into tears on the phone, but I had to stay composed. And I'm like, this is my situation. This is where I am. I don't even know where I am. I'm off of exit. I don't know this, and I'm in Hudson Plot's shack in front of a police station. It's getting dark. I have a pregnant lady who's hungry. I've got 2 yeshiva guys. I don't know what to do. I'm stuck here. I don't know where to go. Stop. Everything's going to be fine. You wait there 10 minutes, somebody's coming. So 10 minutes, somebody's coming? So I tell my friend, listen, let's wait 10 minutes before you send your husband out and your son-in-law. Let's wait. Because Chaverim said they're coming. I don't know what they're going to do for us, but they said they're coming. Ladies, 10 minutes 10 minutes on the dot, I can't even describe, 10 minutes on the dot, a car shows up with 2 guys. They start talking to me, getting the details of everything that's happened. One guy is so geschickt, one guy is so with it, he says, you know what, let me call a friend who happens to work in the DMV, I have an in with him, to see Bechlal, why your license was suspended. Bing, 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 they call him up, yeah, your license taka was suspended. Why did the license get suspended? Because you had to renew your license, and blah, 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 and you didn't realize it. I forgot what the thing was, or maybe it was like, what was it exactly? No, I think I accumulated too many points on my license, and because I accumulated too many points, they give me an option to pay my way out, but since I didn't because I was in Israel, and the letter was sent to a previous address, it was a big balagan. Bekitzer, they suspended my license, period. Well, the good news was that his friend tells him, well, guess what? DMV is open on Friday, but even though it's July 4th weekend. So why don't you find a way to bring her back so Friday morning she could deal with it. She'll just pay off the debt, whatever she owes for the points that she reached, and they'll clear everything for her, and she'll at least be able to drive. So now I'm like, what do we do? I can't leave my car parked here in a police station until Monday. So the guy says, don't worry, everything's going to be good. He says, to tell you what we're going to do. I have a guy who's already on his way, who has to go for a simcha in Brooklyn. He's going to take you all back in his big SUV to Brooklyn. I said, what's with the car? He says, I'm going to take your car. Well, where are you going to take my car to? I'm going to take it to my bungalow colony, not too far from here. It's like 20 minutes away. I'm going to leave it parked there. Sunday, I have a brother-in-law who's spending Shabbat with us. He doesn't have a way to get back to Brooklyn, but he's in Williamsburg. I'll give him your car. He has a license. He'll drive your car back to Williamsburg. You make arrangements to pick up your car by him wherever he is in Williamsburg on Sunday. Oh, I'm like, you got to really trust somebody to give away your car to do different people. This guy's taking the car to the colony. His brother-in-law, who I know from a hole in the wall, is taking it back on Sunday to Williamsburg. Something in me said, take the car. Look what they're doing for me. So one guy drove away. The other guy takes my car and goes to his bungalow colony, waiting for the third guy to come with his SUV to pick us all up to take us back to Brooklyn. Now the third guy shows up. He's a Chassidish guy, very nice guy. Packs us all up into the car. And he's driving, and he stops at a gas station. And I'm thinking, he probably has to fill up gas. No, he doesn't have to fill up gas. He stopped, he went into the grocery store at the gas station, comes into the car with sack loads of snacks of all different kinds, and he throws it to us in the back and he says, have fun while we drive for 3 hours. He realized we were hungry. He brought us snacks and drinks and on the house. Have fun. Would you like me to put on, he even had a little screen, would you like me to put on the latest Shweki concert? Even that. I'm like, thank you so much, thank you. I just want to, I'm just relieved, and I'm thanking Hashem the whole way. What a chesed min hashamayim this was from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You didn't leave me stranded. But what am I trying to tell you? What am I trying to tell you? The chesed that these people did. They took a part of themselves and they gave it to somebody else. They went out of their way. This was already almost 9 o'clock we're talking about now. And they all did a chesed somehow. One guy took my car, the other guy drove this one to me, the other one came with his SUV and went out of his way, instead of going straight into the city, came to pick us up. He stopped off at a grocery store and there's a gas station, took us, and each of us got a ride to their location, meaning he drove me to my house, he drove the pregnant girl, the Gioret, to her house, he drove the one boy that came with his friend to his house, and the friend to his house. You understand what we're talking about? Chaverim? Chaverim, mamash. Mamash. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's the example that I tried to give you. Your friend is stranded on the highway somewhere in Hudson Plots. She's got no money with her. It's getting dark. No cars are driving by. She's in front of a police station with 2 guys over there with the 2 yeshiva boys and a pregnant lady. What would you do? Would you not try to help? So look at the chesed of Klal Yisrael. First of all, my friend who was thinking of ways how her husband and the brother-in-law can come. They were going to travel 4 hours to get us and back. Then we've got Chaverim on the other hand coming and doing. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. Zacharti la chesed ne'uraich. This is what I'm talking about. So let's go back to the Seder night. Oh, by the way, just so you know, I went to the DMV the next day and they cleared it all up for me. What happened was I accumulated too many points. There was a red light ticket and a seat belt and a couple of other things, and usually when you get to a certain amount of points, they give you an option to pay your way out of it so you can continue driving. Because I wasn't there, exactly what the guy told me, I paid them the money and I had my license reinstated. V'akol tov v'yafeh. Let's go back to the Seder night and to the fourth siman of Yachatz, where we break the middle matzah into two pieces. With one piece, we fulfill the requirement of lechem ani by consuming the matzah the way a poor man would eat his bread. And the other piece is hidden away for the afikoman, which is eaten at the end of the meal. Notice how the smaller piece is used for the mitzvah of eating matzah, and the larger piece is used for the afikoman. Now we just learned that we're trying to commemorate the enormous chesed done by those Jews who were leaving Egypt. I don't know if you've ever tried this, but it's almost impossible to break a matzah into two equal pieces. It's almost impossible. There's always going to be a larger piece and a smaller piece, even if it's slight. But during Yetziat Mitzrayim, those who did the chesed with their fellow brothers, we're told, gave the larger piece to their friends in need, and they kept the smaller piece for themselves. Therefore, when we reenact the events of Yetziat Mitzrayim at our Seder, we do the same thing. We keep the smaller piece of the middle matzah for ourselves to fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah during the meal, and we hide the larger piece for the afikoman, which symbolizes the important mitzvah of giving tzedakah. And that zchut of tzedakah is like the afikoman. How so? Because that zchut is hidden away in Shamayim for our olam haba. There's a story in the Gemara of Baba Batra about a king named King Munbaz. His treasures were depleting drastically because he was busy feeding the poor for years and years and years due to the famine around the land there. So his brothers and family, they came over to him and with kas, and they said, "What's going on with you? What's happening with you? You're giving away too much. Your fathers hoarded their wealth and they just added it to the fortune of their fathers and their fathers before them, and they accumulated more and more. Yet you're just giving it all away. What's the meaning of this?" And he answered them the following: "My fathers hoarded their wealth down below, but I have amassed my wealth up above. My fathers stored their funds in an insecure place, in a place where the hand of others controls. But I have accumulated my wealth in a secure place, a place where the hand of others does not control." Ladies, as we know, the night of Pesach is designated as the time for the future Geulah, just as it states in Sefer Shemot. Leil Shimurim Hu LaHashem. It's a night of anticipation and a vigil for Hashem. Lehotziam me'eretz Mitzrayim, to take them out of the land of Egypt. Hu halayla hazeh, this particular night, Shimurim lechol bnei Yisrael ledorotam, is Hashem's guarding of all of Bnei Yisrael for generations. What does this mean? Rabbi Yoshua alav hashalom in the Gemara of Rosh Hashanah says, Ben Nisan nig'alu. In the month of Nisan, the Jews were redeemed in Egypt. Ben Nisan atidin ligael. And in Nisan, they are destined to be redeemed. And where do we know this from? Because when the Torah says, Lel Shimurim, it means Lel HaMeshumar. It's a night of anticipation Uba misheshet yamei bereshit. It's a night that's been anticipated since the 6 days of creation and onward. And Rashi adds to this and he says, Hameshumar uba lageula. It's anticipated this night and it's designated for redemption. That night of the Pesach Seder. So regarding the future Geulah, the future redemption, the Navi Micha, alav shalom, tells us that Hashem is going to create wonders like He did for our ancestors in Egypt when they left. And in what merit were Bnei Yisrael taken out of Egypt? Well, the Holy Kolbo says that it was in the merit of the covenant that they made in which they agreed to do acts of chesed with one another. They graciously broke their matzot into pieces in order to share it with those who didn't have any. And in a similar fashion, when we are going to leave this galut, we'll also leave in the zechut of our tzedakah. That's something the Gemara of Baba Batra expresses. What does it say there? Listen to these words. Gedola tzedakah shemekarevet et hageulah. The mitzvah of the tzedakah is so great it can bring the redemption closer. So ladies, the opening passage of the Haggadah begins with the words Ha-lachma anya diachalo avhatana Our forefathers ate their matzot like a poor man eats his bread. But they broke their whole matzot into pieces to share it with others who were less fortunate. And this was a wonderful act of chesed that helped to hasten the Geulah. Ladies, this was a redemption that was born from an unselfish nature. It was a redemption that was created because we thought about somebody else and not just ourselves, because we extended to ourselves to our other half. The other half. Who's the other half? Who's the other half? Our fellow brothers and sisters are our other half, because what do we know? Klal Yisrael arevim ze lazeh. And the entirety of Israel is an aguda achat. We are one. We are one. So when we extend ourselves to the other half of ourselves, we become a unit. We become whole again. And that's what the Chachamim are telling us. They're teaching us that we became an aguda achat. We didn't only become a fortified nation as we were leaving from Egypt. We became one nation. We became one. Now, when we talk about redemption that comes from selflessness, try and picture the scene if you can. Try. Imagine that you're in your own homes. It's Pesach night. And suddenly the shofar is sounded. Doo! A siren is heard. And you see Eliyahu Hanavi Zachur Latov standing there announcing the words, Higia Zman Geulatchem. The time of redemption has come. And he tells you, you can now get up. Pack your bags as quickly as you can, because you are going to be leaving this place. God is taking you out of this galut, and He's going to do it beyad rama uvezora netuya. He's going to take you out with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm. Now, imagine you're sitting there, Pesach Seder, and you just saw Eliyahu Navi. You hear the shofar. You just heard these words as you're sitting in your house. You're in the middle of your meal. What would you do? What would you do? I know what I would do, but what would you do? You'd quickly get up, grab your suitcase, and as fast as you possibly could, pack your bags, take care of whatever you need to leave. You'd be in the mad rush of leaving. And truthfully, while you're rushing to pack and to leave, who in heaven's name has time to think about the neighbor? Who has time to think about the neighbor? It's you who's being redeemed at this very moment. You, because what words do we read in the Haggadah of Pesach? We say, Bechol dor vador, in every single generation, Chayav Adam lirot et atzmo. Every person has to see himself, Ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim, as if he himself was redeemed from Egypt. It's a personal and individual vision. It's a personal and individual feeling of redemption. You are being redeemed. But Hashem says, you know what was inspiring for me to see? Each of you is being redeemed individually and on a personal level. Yet you still manage to think about your fellow Jew. In the middle of your mad rush to personally be redeemed, you're worried if the next door neighbor has enough food. You're worried if they manage to gather all their provisions, if they were able to bake, if they're emotionally ready. And you said to yourself, let me knock on the neighbor's door and see, do they have enough food? Let me see if they're ready b'chal to be redeemed. Maybe they need my help. Knock, knock. Hi. Well, I don't know if you had a chance to prepare anything, but just in case, here's something for the way. Wow. If you think about it, it's a tremendous level of selflessness and consideration. You're being redeemed, for crying out loud. You. Who has time to think about the next door neighbor? If anything, it should be afuch. It should be the opposite. Because you could say, in the same way I'm being redeemed, I'm sure that my fellow Jew is also being redeemed. If God is taking care of me, He must be taking care of him. We're all being redeemed. But no, we did not think that way in Egypt. The Jews in Egypt thought, just because I'm being taken care of doesn't mean my fellow brother's being helped at this very moment. Doesn't mean he's ready to be helped. Let me make sure. Let me just make sure. So even in the midst of the urgency and the haste where everybody was rushing to just get out and leave Egypt already, so many Jews took the time to see to it that somebody else will have enough as they make their exit out from Egypt. That's a huge chesed. That's a grand chesed. Ladies, I want to conclude with this idea. A major element of Pesach, maybe even more important than the actual seder itself, is the abstention from Hamet during the 7 days of the Chag. This prohibition of not eating Hamet begins mid-morning of Erev Pesach, and its source comes from a mitzvah given in the Torah HaKdosha. Now the Torah is also referred to as Torat Chaim, the Torah of life. Torah comes from the word hora'ah, which means a lesson or an instruction. So Torat Chaim translates to living lessons or lessons of life. That means that every aspect of Torah has a lesson that's relevant to us even today in this generation. So it must mean that the commandment in the Torah, the Torat Chaim, to refrain from eating chametz for 7 days must have a deeper lesson that can guide us today in the year 2021. What's the lesson that we learned from the Torah that prohibits us from eating chametz during these days of Pesach? Well, first of all, what is chametz? Chametz is basically dough that has risen, or yeast that causes the dough to rise. There's a rising. Boop. But matzah, on the other hand, is flat. It does not rise. So on a deeper level, chametz represents the inflated ego while Matzah represents humility and self-nullification. The ego, the self, is the main cause of many character flaws and weaknesses that we have. In most cases, many of our negative character traits stem from a lack of selflessness and humility. How does that happen? Well, when the self, when the ani, the me, is disproportionately felt, we're going to do anything to accommodate and satisfy the self, including inappropriate behaviors. Now, the prohibition in the Torah against eating Hamet is a very serious one, because it conveys the important message that we have to run away from Hamet and what it represents. Therefore, during Pesach, which is the holiday of liberation, we're given the opportunity to contemplate the deeper significance behind this command, which is to liberate ourselves somewhat from our own ego and to become selfless and humble people. Pesach tells us you have the potential to unshackle yourself from the grip of yourself, which means that the observance of this prohibition of not eating Hametz provides us with some kind of spiritual energy to help us kind of tone down the self, the me, the attitude of, well, I need this now for myself. Why aren't things going my way? I, me. So Pesach helps us to harness extra energies by observing this mitzvah of abstaining from chametz. And now we could go back to what the Haggadah says. Bechol dor vador chayav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. One is obligated in every single generation to view himself as if he left Egypt. That's what we said earlier. But you know how else we could read these words? It's a big chidush. Bechol dor vador. In every single generation. Chayav adam lirot. Every person is obligated to see et atzmo, how he only sees himself. Ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim, as if he's the only one who left Mitzrayim, the only one who left Egypt. Yes, you were redeemed individually from there, and you have to feel that you were. But you were not the only one who was redeemed. And you have to know that, and you have to feel that. That's why the Chachamim teach us that Bnei Yisrael merited to leave Egypt, because they were committed to doing acts of chesed with one another. Because they were selfless, they were kind, and they put their own egos aside. They didn't just see et atzmo, themselves, their needs, their wants. And similarly, if we'll follow their example and we do acts of chesed for our fellow Jews in need, we too will merit a geula. And that's why we conclude the opening passage of the Haggadah with the following encouraging words. Now we are here, but next year we're all going to be in Eretz Yisrael. Now we are slaves in this galut, but next year we're going to be free men. That's the promise and assurance that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. That if we model our ancestors' generosity and kindness of their youth, and will selflessly do acts of chesed with one another, especially in these pressing times, we'll be zeichet to witness wonders like the ones our forefathers did when they left Egypt. Ladies, I want to wish you all a chag kasher v'sameach, a chag of joy and introspection and closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A Chag where you feel and see the Yad Hashem, and any doubts you might have should fade into the night. May you be Zaycha to experience this year a Chag of miracles, of blessings, of the final Geulah, and that when you open your door for Shvo Chamatcha, it will be that you do see Eliyahu HaNavi Zachur Latov standing there announcing finally, Higia Zman Geulatchem. Have a Chag Sameach, and Bezat Hashem we'll see each other again Chol HaMoed.